So I don't do Instagram stories.
You don't do Instagram stories?
No, I'm like the worst with social media, which is like terrible in cases like this where you have like something to talk about and then you have no audience to talk about it too.
You have something to promote, your film White Rabbit.
Yeah, wow. I'm really excited about that.
Okay, so because actually I saw you do a Q&A, you and the director, his name is
Daryl Wein.
Daryl Wein, yes. I saw you guys do a Q&A at the Legion M Lounge. You guys did it was just like a Q&A, you probably don't remember because you must have done so much media during this past Sundance.
Yeah, during Sundance, I don't even remember. I was like really sick and just going from door to door to door. I don't even remember it.
So what is that experience like? You have this movie. We should talk, obviously we're going to talk about your movie.
Yeah.
But it's a very personal, very like, you made it with all the resources you had. It was so crazy. Really intimate.
I mean, literally when I met Daryl, he kind of proposed, like, he's like, do you remember when you used to make films, like when you were in high school, like you'd get a bunch of friends with your camera and you'd go out and you just shoot a movie? I was like, yeah. He's like, do you want to do that with me? This is like when I just met him. And I was like, no. Well, everything in my body was like, no. You know, I'm a planner. I research roles. You know, I have to like have a script. I need to read the script. You know, I don't just go out and play, you know. So because everything in me said no, like because everything in my body was like shaking no, of course I agreed. So yeah, Sundance was just a deadline for us. And you know, it's like we were like, let's make a movie that we want to watch and not like worry about making money or it being marketable or to which kind of audience we're targeting, but let's just make the movie that we want to see. And then we had Sundance as like the deadline because, you know, indie films, you can just keep making it.
Right. It's not done.
Like,
it's
never done until someone says it's done.
Yeah.
That's like any like good artwork. I feel like it's like, just stop.
So you submitted on
we submitted.
September.
It was late, you know, it was a late submission and it was just like a deadline to have. And then, you know, gosh, like I never ever thought we would get into Sundance and we got in, and that was just like a testament to, oh, the way to get to Sundance is like not to care if you get into Sundance or not. I mean, of course we cared, but my gosh, like that was so unexpected. So when we did get in, I mean, we were just like, we had to shoot, like we didn't even have like color correction, you know, we didn't even have sound correction, any of that. It was like a rough cut that we submitted. Yeah.
And what was that? Okay, so White Rabbit gets in. How do you find out that White Rabbit got into Sundance?
Well, Daryl actually called me. It was like, it was after Thanksgiving and like, you know, towards like the holidays, and it's that time of the year where you're just like, you know, because we spent like so much time kind of, it was like punk rock, you know, we're like out in the streets, like wearing so many different hats and just going crazy like 14, 18 hours a day. And then I like even threw up one night, you know, because I was so stressed and just on adrenaline pumping. And so, you know, you go through that and then it's over. And then it's like this kind of lull, like this weird, you know, emptiness that you have after giving so much to a project. So it was kind of this quiet, like very quiet moment. And then we had Thanksgiving and I was kind of like reconnecting with my friends. Like, they're like, where have you been? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm alive, you know. So then I get this phone call from Daryl, you know, and I thought he was just calling to like wish me, you know, happy holidays. But it's so weird because, you know, I like kind of barely know him, except we've had this like crash course, like intimacy in making this project together. Mm-hmm. And then he told me the news that I'm not supposed to share it with anyone, but that like we got in. And I was like, what? I was like, what? Yeah, it was super. It was very like emotional time actually, because I've been working in Hollywood for so long, you know, like I've been an actress and like an actor for hire for so long, telling like all these other people's stories. And not that I don't enjoy doing that, but I really got into this business because I had so much to share. And I just felt like for so long I wasn't like really utilized to like tell this kind of niche or a specific story or be able to show my kind of humor, which I thought was kind of funny, And so here was this project that we just made like solely just out of pure love and did everything that we wanted to do. And then it's validated by getting into this like huge, institutional film fest and like, this prestigious like place. And yeah, I have to say, like, it was like better than. It would be nice to get nominated for an Oscar or an Emmy, but it was like on that level. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because your credits are vast. You've consistently worked as an actress in both television and film, in a lot of prestigious projects. But I get the sense that based on that one scene where you meet the director who invites you to it's a very pivotal part. Then you find out you have 2 lines and he wants you to do it in an accent, which is like this character, this sort of performance art that you do in public. I want to talk about those sequences, but that scene in particular where the director is talking to you.
I love that scene.
I love that scene. It's this entitled white dude who's talking to you about
this liberal
like,
guy who's going to help.
Super liberal. He's going to help you, right? Like, and so that must have come from your previous experiences.
Actually, that scene is very much Daryl's contribution.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it is?
So it's him poking fun at himself, which I think, that's like a huge testament to his kind of awareness and awokeness that he can like sort of make fun of himself at the fact that, here he is, even the way that he approached me was like, don't you want to see a movie? When's the last time you saw a movie with an Asian American female lead? And I'm like, why are you asking this question? This white, like Jewish man. So yeah, that scene's very meta in that I think he's poking fun at the fact that, he cares about these issues. And here he is like coming to like approach me to do this project, to have this like representation, but who is he, and like all the sort of presumptions that he has. And, a lot of times he does such a good job of like, that scene was such a good example of how I have so many evolved, friends who are white and they're very liberal and progressive and they think they're so awoke. And yet, they'll say like the dumbest things to me, like, oh, I totally see you playing the best friend, and it's like, you're like, why the best friend? Why not the lead? It doesn't even occur to them and they think they're being so evolved.
Well, it's also like, I think that part of, I think the issue is, I think moviegoers are lazy. Honestly, I think that I've just never like, this is something, my girlfriend really dislikes this. I am not a foodie. I eat food so that I don't die. What I am is I am obsessed with film. So I've been watching foreign films since I was a kid, and my, just my palate when it comes to films that I see is just very broad, very diverse palette. And I don't think most Americans are like that. They are like, well, it's playing at the theater. It's the biggest at the box office. It's the #1 movie as far as money is concerned. And that if that's the only barometer by which you choose to see films, you're not looking at, you're not looking beyond what the big films are, the multiplex, the Marvel, Star Wars, Disney, Pixar, which is half the movies made.
When I was growing up, when I was growing up and I was looking at, these movies, of course I watched like all the John Hughes films and like Pretty in Pink and Breakfast, like all of those. But I also I remember watching Delicatessen and like feeling like, whoa, like this guy is speaking in this visual, like visceral language that like really gets to me, or, like a lot of like the French New Wave films of Truffaut and Godard. And I remember, going to high school and being like, what are these? Like these like weird films, but then relating to it in this way. So I feel like you kind of do have to like seek it out,
Right.
And yeah, how boring would it be if we just,
Yes, I grew up in the Midwest. It is boring. It is, and I feel so fortunate to live in Los Angeles, where it is. I feel like this is LA is a really good representation of the melting pot, and I go by food. If you go to, and yes, not a foodie, but if you've been to Grand Central Market in downtown LA, I love that place. It is.
There's like a pot. Yeah.
That is anything and everything.
Everything.
It's everyone.
Right. Asian American.
Every kind of person.
Fusion, yeah.
Yeah. It's
Italian.
I love it.
Like Mexican food. So good.
But I was fortunate enough that my mother growing up in the Midwest was always like, don't go see those movies at the mall. Don't see those. Go to the art house. You got to see this new filmmaker, this guy, Spike Lee, made this movie. She's got to have. You got to see this film, Jim Jarmusch. You've got to see who did Stranger Than Paradise. You've got to see. So when I grew up in Detroit, there was a thing called the Detroit Institute of the Arts. The DIA would present movies, and so they would get a lot of the foreign films and whatnot. So my palette in terms of film viewing was always very broad.
Yeah.
And I think when I see, I just see it as a laziness on the part of moviegoers to not look beyond, right? To just look at what the big films are. So I appreciate at least like your friend maybe cares about diversity, which is a good thing. I think maybe, I think that's like, okay, that's good. You get an A for effort.
Yeah.
But I think that you really, when you have a broad cultural, scope when it comes to cinema, I just think that is eye-opening. I also think
but it's about
helps.
like also accessibility, right?
Right, that's true.
I mean, I appreciate like shows like this where you're talking about indie films, but it's like, how would the audience even know about it to even seek it out? I remember in New York, I used to go to this video store called Kim's Video Store.
Oh, yes. They used to sell Film Threat. Kim's Videos used to sell Film Threat magazine when we were in print
oh my
back in the 90s.
They were the best. And so that's actually where I discovered this director named Hal Hartley, who is like a beloved New York, director, auteur. I watched all of his films, but it's because they had like a whole section called Hal Hartley. And I'm like, my gosh, I need to check this out. I wouldn't have known if I didn't go like browsing, like to even seek him out. How would I know, And
I'm lucky I worked at a video store. So David Lynch and John Waters were like, right. John Waters was like,
I love John Waters, of course.
Love John Waters.
Yeah. But it's like, now we.
Yeah, exactly.
But now, we've got like, I guess it's harder to seek out almost because there is such accessibility, and it is easier to be lazy because now you don't even have to go to the video stores. Now it's like all about what is Netflix feeding us,
Right.
What is Amazon promoting,
But also you can download, there's so many different apps, right? There's Crackle, there's this or whatever. There's Asian Crush is a good one. They've got
Asian Crush.
It's just an app to watch Korean films.
Yes.
And I don't know. Korean dramas, comedies. Oh my God. I saw the funniest one, this one called 200 Pound Beauty.
I saw that.
Oh, you saw that? Okay.
Yeah.
Was that funny and weird? And like, just like, what is
like
this?
Identity.
Like there're just so many, so many great discussion points for that film. But I would not have seen it had I not downloaded that app.
Asian Crush.
Yes, it's not the only one.
Yeah.
It's not the only one out there, but there's also like, there's even a British one that just came out. It's just all British dramas.
Yeah.
It's like
exciting.
It's like Pride and Prejudice 24/7. That's all it is. It's
also a little overwhelming. There's just this large flood of content.
Yeah.
Remember,
for me, when I get so many choices, I kind of just freeze.
Yeah. Or watch The Office again for the 100th time.
Go to your go-tos, but I guess there's so many. First of all, your movie I wouldn't describe as a comedy. It is funny, hilariously funny.
Thank you.
But I wouldn't put it in, I don't think it should be in the comedy section.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely it should be under indie favorites because this is something that, we've written about your film before. I know, didn't Alan Ng write, I know that there's coverage of it on the site.
Oh, I wasn't aware.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to go.
Yes, previously.
Okay.
But I specifically just wanted to talk to you because it's just so different. So there's this recurring thing that happens in the film. For those of you that have not, we're not going to talk spoilers on this podcast, although I don't know it. You play this character in public. Is that something that you really did? So you walk around, you have this like sort of platinum blonde, this sort of bright white wig, sometimes with a hat, wearing this outfit where you're carrying around a microphone, crank loud, and in public. Now, can I ask, did you do those in public? Was that done?
I did, yeah.
So there was run and gun.
Yeah, so before I met Daryl, I was doing these performances in K-Town, in Koreatown, because, this kind of whole performance spurred out of like, after the election, the famous one, and we all just kind of felt like we needed to do something. I wanted to look back at history, like of the LA riots, which was a huge moment of sort of like Korean American identity. During the riots, I'd say was when actually like Korean American identity formed, because we were fairly like new immigrants. We had come, from the 80s. And so by the 90s, like most of us, were like maybe 10 years old in the States. And so like there was so much that happened during that time that I wanted to kind of reflect and mirror to talk about the divisive times right now that we're going through. And so
it's gotten worse. I mean,
Exactly.
Do you believe that it's gotten worse?
It gets worse every day. Every morning you wake up and you're like, no!
What is the, it really is troublesome. So
I wanted to kind of revisit history and kind of, talk about like who gets to occupy this history, who gets to tell this story, and shamans, the reason she's dressed all in white is because she's like the sort of like reflecting shaman, who's like, and white represents in Korea like rebirth, death, rebirth. And also, for a lot of artists, it's about reflecting light and truth, right? So I dressed as this kind of kooky, let's say shaman clown, and I go to Koreatown and I'm performing these pieces, and of course everyone thinks you're crazy, you know? So it is very much like derived from that performance piece that I did, which Daryl saw at a theater.
So he saw it before he even met you?
Yeah.
Wow.
So he saw the performance, and like literally 3 months later, he found that we had one Instagram friend in common. So he just asked her to introduce us, and then we had this meet. And I mean, I'm going to share with you this like bit of story. Like the first day we ever met, we talked for 4 hours, came up with the blueprint, and that night we shot the beginning of White Rabbit.
On one meeting, you came up with an outline for an indie feature film from a 4 hour and just started shooting.
Yeah.
What was the first scene?
The first scene was a shot at the market where I'm performing the piece. So he's like, let's just do it. Let's just shoot something. He's like, what are you doing tonight? And I was like, what do you mean? I have a life. And he's like, no, come on, like just let's go shoot it in the park. I was like, no, I know the perfect place. We're going to go to this market in my neighborhood and meet me there at like 8 p.m. So we went, and of course we didn't have a permit for this. So of course we got kicked out in like 5 minutes, but we got the scene.
Oh my God. I've first of all never heard. You always hear these stories of I slaved on the script for years. I went and I raised the money. I always feel that money is an obstacle.
Yeah,
it's a reason to not make a movie, and it shouldn't be.
What's funny is I had actually tried to make a movie before and failed miserably trying to raise money. And so the funny thing is I had some of these stories in my head forever, and they were written. And so talk about like how you're, sometimes when you fall or you fail, it's a good thing because it's supposed to like bring you to the next, great thing. And so when we were making this film, I had all these stories I wanted to tell about sort of art and commerce anyways. And so when Daryl and I were talking, we have a very like creative shorthand. And I think that's a testament to how he was able to like really see me during the performance and know that like he was thinking about it too. Like the idea of like the art piece, because in the movie you have my performance, but then the movie is also very much about like this sort of life of an artist in the age of capitalism in Los Angeles, right?
Well, there's also a great conversation you have with an old college friend, just talking about how
to be an artist,
what it's like to be an artist. And
you have to marry rich.
Right. Well, it reminds me of advice that Dan Mervish, who's one of the founders of Slamdance, gave. I saw Dan give a speech, and one of the questions was, what's your best advice for a filmmaker? And he said, marry a doctor.
Yeah.
Because his wife is a pediatrician, and so she has this straight job with the steady paycheck, and Dan goes off and every couple of years delivers a new indie movie that he just decided to make.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's what I need to do.
Yeah.
Is there a doctor? Is there a
Dentists,
doctor?
too.
Dentist as well?
Is there a dentist listening
I
to
learned
this?
that one in film school.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, it's funny because there's this rad lady. Her name is Beth Pickens, who leads a grant writing class to a lot of artists, at the Women's Center. And I took her course and surrounded, there was over a dozen of us, and we're like sitting in the semicircle. And she has us go around and just basically talk about our relationship to money. And literally everyone broke down. They're like,
Wow.
I don't want to need money, but I need money to make my art, and I don't know how to get money, and I don't even want money to be my conscience, but I'm thinking about money, and I don't know what to do about money. And she's like, just repeat after me. She's like, it's just capitalism. She's like, it's just capitalism. And so we were just, all of us in a group, like we started repeating, it's just capitalism. Yeah, it's capitalism. There's no guilt, just we need money. You need money.
I mean, it's so weird because I've never had money. For some reason, I've always had jobs. I've always worked. I've always been responsible, but I've never had one job. I've always had here's the thing I do that makes money, and then here's the passion project that I put all my energy into. I mean, but your relationship with money, it's really interesting that you say that, because there's some people, I feel like the less they want it, the more it finds them. And I remember talking to, because I got investors for a film project that I did years ago, and I asked the same question to the lawyer who was representing the guys who were going to put all the money in the project, and said, I've done all these things. How come I don't have money?
Yeah.
And she said, you don't care about it. You don't care about money. You don't want it. That's why you don't have it. Whereas these dudes were like, money's just a tool. So they're very casual. But I do believe that's a whole movie right there, is your relationship with money. That's
Totally.
your opening scene. I feel like you could, after this, go out and start making this new movie that you're writing. You're workshopping it on the podcast right now. So that's a great, because that's
White Rabbit is it is a dialogue about art and commerce, right? I mean, what are your survival jobs to do these videos that you want to make?
TaskRabbit.
Exactly.
which is
I had never heard that before.
Yeah.
Well, now you know. Yeah. You can call a TaskRabbit to digitize anything you need, or be your babysitter.
I actually want to be a TaskRabbit. That sounds like it.
It's a real app like Uber, whatever. Yeah. It's just you get someone to basically do sort of some, organize your DVDs.
Well, if you need a personal assistant,
Right.
if you need a ride to the airport, I guess you have Uber now, but anything, if you need something mailed, if you need someone to go to the post office, any type of errands. There's even a section for construction,
Really?
I should be getting a commission
You
from
should.
TaskRabbit.
You should. 'Cause wait, did you clear it in the movie? Does that need to be cleared?
Does
though?
that need to be cleared? I
Does
think
it need to
that's
be cleared?
public domain.
Kind of public, yeah.
Please don't get us in trouble.
Right. Yeah. I don't think you're not going to get in trouble. But it's interesting because also the film, through your character, the film is very therapeutic. I mean, there's definitely your character's working things out, and I think sort of following your character on this journey, it's amazing because there's a love story aspect. There's loss. There's and also some bizarrely funny things happen with regard to some of that. So I mean, once you guys shot that first scene, which is that the first scene in the movie? I think it is. Where did the process of making it go from there? Was it then let's do more of these? Here's what happens to the. I mean, you kind of came up with the beats Well,
in our blueprint, what we talked about was sort of the performance that I had set at Red Cat, and it was about it's called "Can You Hear Me?" So, it's about this artist who really has a lot to say and sort of themes of gravity, about identity, about social, economic, political, huge topics, so she's putting up this piece to the public, trying to contribute, and yet I think the whole movie is also about but then she has this trivial job as a TaskRabbit, because she has to make a living. So I think the conversation and why I think it's such a comedy is because it is such a tragic comedy of trying to be an artist just day to day, just the daily grind of being an artist, I mean, sometimes you're just like, is anything I'm doing like hitting anyone out there? Is anything I'm doing worthwhile? So, in this age of technology, with her YouTube or Instagram, like she's looking for immediate validation and she doesn't get much. And so if you're not, if you don't have an audience, like, do you as an artist have the right to take up space? So all of these questions, I think they're very like human questions, they're very universal questions, like sort of the daily grind of living where as human beings, we're like, is anything what I have to contribute to the world like worthwhile? Like, is anything I do matter? So I think like, even though it's such like a specific journey that Sophia like goes through, it is something that everyone like relates to on a basic human level,
Yeah, I mean, it hits, especially with regard to the failed relationship.
Yeah, wanting connection.
Right.
Wanting something that she can like tap into.
Yeah, I feel like that sequence was really, so relatable and sad. But but as you put, like tragedy is sort of woven into that comedy. It just worked so well. Now, I also want to ask,
like as much as like she's giving and she wants to contribute, she's, I wouldn't say a narcissist, but she is an artist that's like, it's really funny to think that like she believes what she's doing matters, so much and nobody else does, but she continues to do it anyway. And then, her mukbang pieces about consumption and how like America's addiction to sugar or, snack food. She thinks they're like these grand, sort of, commentaries or critique on social living, and yet it's funny.
and there's also a great scene where you go with I forget the character's name, the other girl, Victoria, right, which
played by Nana Ghana.
Oh my God,
who is just famous for being fabulous.
Okay, the chemistry that you guys have is great. So I feel like because that chemistry is so good, there is, when things don't go great, you really feel it. There's an amazing scene where the two of you go to an art gallery and start picking apart and critiquing every single thing. I thought that was hysterical. I thought that was so good.
Yeah.
What was the reaction at Sundance or just at other, because I know it's played other festivals. What was the reaction at the did people get all the humor, the things that like...
Yeah, it's been amazing going to the festivals and visiting like different cities. I didn't realize before making White Rabbit that there's this whole like film festival world, because I haven't gone to many. So like even after Sundance, there are all these small cities. Talk about like not being a lazy audience. There's like everyone in every place, they're searching for these good stories to watch. So, film festivals are kind of like a great place to be able to see these like sort of hidden gems.
Well, what's awesome also about festivals is that you're seeing these movies not being tainted by commerce. And by that, like you're seeing White Rabbit there's one photo and there's a description in the program guide that is incredibly vague and probably works in the word earnest in some form. And so there's sort of a, like, it doesn't give anything away, right? So you're just, this is all I've got. I don't know anything about this. I haven't seen the trailer 600 times.
Yeah.
So I don't know what I'm going to get. And I think that's why these films at festivals are so enjoyable.
Yeah.
Because they haven't been over marketed.
And at Sundance, it was such an emotional moment for me because I hadn't seen the film in the large, in the big screen. So it was my first time watching it in the big, because we don't have like a theater, so right. It's like we're watching the film, in the theater with this Sundance audience, with the premiere of it, and it was so emotional. It was like packed, because like Sundance, like everything sells out. Mm-hmm. And I remember afterwards, some of the Park City housewives came up to me. They were sort of in line to speak to me, and they're like, I don't know anything about performance art. I've never seen anything about performance art, but your movie really spoke to me because I consider myself an artist too. I have this Etsy account and, I crochet these little stuffed animals and I sell them on Etsy, and sometimes they're not very popular, but I keep doing it anyways. And so I was just like so touched, that like, here's a woman who knows nothing about performance art, and she so got the film, And then also in San Francisco, in one of the festivals in San Francisco, Frameline, I believe it was. This one woman, you know, she didn't have a question, like during the Q&A, she didn't have a question, but she got up and she started bawling. And I was just like, oh no, is she going to like attack me? Oh, no. She's like, I've been waiting 36 years to see myself represented on the screen. And she's like, in this film, like you like really captured my life. And I thought like, I'm just done.
Wow.
You know, that was like, I was like, yeah, we made this movie for you.
I mean, you know, there's so many, the idea of just exploring that life of an artist and the sacrifices, and I think in many ways, there have been films that have tried to do that come off very pretentious and a little, the humor that you capture in this is just palpable.
Oh, thank you.
I really want, I kind of feel like, because I feel like I would love to see this character more in future. You know what I mean? And because the running time is perfect. It's like 69 minutes or something.
Which is funny because Daryl and I like had a huge argument about this one like landlord scene. There was like the scene where the landlord's like trying to kick her out, you know, the artist. He's like, no, you know, we shot this whole scene. It was like crazy to produce because I had to borrow, you know, like the space, and I had to beg my neighbor to be in it. And we finally got this like 10-minute scene, and he cut it. And I'm like, why would you do that? Like, that's a great scene. He's like, I know, but it just doesn't work for the film, you know? And I was like, no, it's a great scene. He's like, I know, but we've seen so, you know. I'm like, no. And now I'm like, oh, wow. You know, I really get it. Like, it's a better movie because it doesn't, you know, have that scene. It's like White Rabbit's not supposed to have that scene. So, like, yeah, he was, like, really good about not being lazy, you know, and cutting.
But that's why I think it just, like, for me, I think for a lot of indie films that we'll see, they'll overstay their welcome. That was not the case with this. I kind of felt like, oh, I want more. I want to know where this is going. I want to see this character do other things.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yay.
I guess that's the point, right? Is leave them wanting more. Yeah. So what's the next? Are you guys working on? You got to be working on another thing. The Sundance deadline is. I think it just passed, but you could turn in late. You could be grandfathered
We're actually, Daryl and I are actually working on a TV show.
Ah, yeah. See, that makes. I feel like that makes a lot of sense.
So it's not completely White Rabbit, you know, the TV show, but it has very similar themes about invisibility and sort of needing to be seen and identity and comedy. So yeah.
So and
I can't say more.
Of course,
but
yeah. I mean, yeah, you don't really want to because, you know, who knows these things. It's so weird with entertainment. I just had a meeting with a buddy of mine.
Yeah.
He's been trying to get a film made for a long time. And just the frustrations with this, it either happens instantly, like it did with yourself with White Rabbit, where you actually don't, it's almost like you approach it because you just decided to do it not knowing whether or not you could do it, and you just did it. And that's after you mentioned something about
it's not like we just did, you know, I mean, to be honest, like, okay, making the film was really hard and it was almost like impossible. We didn't think we could, you know, but we did it. And then like getting into Sundance was like, wow, like such a great, you know, like, talk about dream come true. But then, you know, you think like you get into Sundance and something's supposed to happen, but sometimes nothing happens, you know.
What happened? Let's talk about that.
This year was like incredibly hard. And as much as like, in all of our screening, you know, like all of our screenings were like basically sold out. The audience like loved the film. Everybody who walked, you know, I mean, I don't even know if that's just Sundance crowd, but I mean, I felt really proud of it, you know? And so you think, wow, okay, this movie's going to sell, right? But we had a really tough time, like, you know, sort of getting distribution. We had a very tough time getting any studios interested because it is such an independent film. You know, it is such a niche topic. And what is the story about, you know, an artist, you know, like, and me, I am not really a name that can carry a film, you know, in the traditional Hollywood sense, like the way that you would pitch a film. We had none of those things, you know. So we made a film where we didn't care about money, and so when it came to selling the film, it was like, oh, maybe we're not going to make any money, you know. So it was really, really hard. And so, you know, now we have distribution, but we're playing on demand, and we're playing at the Lemley, but you know, that's a very small sort of theater,
Right.
space, and we're only playing 1 week. So I think sometimes like making the movie is hard, but getting the movie seen is like even harder.
That's a whole other struggle.
Yeah, selling the movie, marketing the movie, even getting through all this noise to even draw attention to your movie so that people can even hear about it. I mean, that's just...
Well,
yeah.
I think that has been, those expectations have been destroyed by the lies that you read in the trades that are, I wrote this movie in a weekend, sold it for $1 million, or those like, this person got rich from doing this. And I think that selling that Hollywood dream is a disservice to people who just want to work and
It's an
do
incredible...
good work.
because then you have these expectations,
Right. You have to manage those expectations and think, well, I might make what a manager makes at a fast food restaurant.
Or like, I might break even.
Yeah. No, that's...
I might not be going bankrupt making this movie.
But for a first indie movie, that's a success to break even. And break even can be this same friend I just had lunch with. It took him 7 years. He's not here, actually. I was gesturing.
Who are you gesturing to?
We went just down the street. We're in the Magical Threads recording studio here at the Parlor Bar on Melrose. There was an amazing, I don't know what, this Italian restaurant down the street. And he was just saying this movie that he made years ago that played Sundance, it just now broke even. And it's an average of generally 7 years is what's
Wow.
accepted as the number that it takes 7 years that if your movie sells. And here's the thing about 80% of movies that play Sundance 2 years after don't even have distribution. The fact that you have distribution, you're out there, you're now...
Thanks, Chris.
Yes, congratulate. What I'm trying to do is congratulate you. And yeah, I feel actually...
So typical. Like, I'm so critical with myself.
Well,
it's not enough.
But I think it's
never enough.
Well, being in the industry, I think is sort of a gift unto itself. It's just being a part of it and being like, you get to do creativity.
I know. I'm a storyteller. I mean, this is all I've ever wanted to be.
So it's, you are like Dorothy, and you could have gotten home the whole time and with those ruby slippers.
Home.
The whole time. You could have done that. But so this TV show now, it's in development, and White Rabbit. What has been, I'm curious the reaction of your family. What did they think of the film? Because, you have your audiences at Sundance and they love everything. And you did, in the movie, you kind of bring up the voice of your mom in the background.
Yeah, which is so funny because she's such a critical mom, but then you meet her and she's like the most supportive mom,
Wow.
It's like, so it's always like a projection that you have of your parents in your head. Like, you think they're so critical and so mean and they're never going to accept you. And that's like farthest from the truth, She's like so supportive of everything.
So she is very supportive. So how does she feel being portrayed in the film? Because it is very much you. This movie is...
Actually, it's not.
It's not?
No, it's not. I mean, the performance art piece, of course, is like from the piece that I did. But the character of Sophie, and when I thought of her, like in terms of like personal life and her struggle and, her day to day, they're actually drawn by like 3 of my close friends who are actually performance artists. And they don't have like a commercial job or, they are full-time artists and they do the daily grind of like writing grants and being completely they don't do commercial work, and so the character of Sophie is actually taken from them.
Do they know that? And what did they think about it?
They actually don't know that. I guess when they watch the movie, they will, because they'll be like, "Oh, that's my dialogue."
Cat's out of the bag now.
Now one of the threads.
But I mean, of course, I do have a Korean mom. I do have Korean parents. And, I have a very like immigrant story like everybody else. I was completely disowned when I decided to go into this field. I got like a scholarship from NYU and I was able to like get out of, wherever I was to like go to school in New York and sort of form my own identity that way. But when I told them I was studying drama, in university, they were like, "No, we're not giving you a dime to do that."
Wow.
Like, "No, you are not going to New York." It's typical, it's like, I mean, our parents in those in those days, like, it was fearful. They're afraid for us, you know. It's a very fear-driven, you know, culture, and they didn't think I would have a chance at making a living in this field. So, you know, I mean, I wish I did listen to them back then. No, but yeah. So I was disowned, and not until like I think when I was on like my first job ever was like Sex and the City, and like my parents like happened to be watching HBO, and they were like, was that you? So then they're like, after they see you on TV, it's like legitimized, you know?
Wow,
now it's
that's
like
great.
you're real. You know, it doesn't matter how many like off-Broadway productions or, you know, intricate like theater pieces you've done. Like if you're seen one time on TV, it's like, you've made it. Oh yeah. They're like, are you famous now?
Send us a check. So also
That's exactly what happened. Where's my commission?
so you do talk about the LA riots, which were you here during?
I actually was not. My father was really active during that scene. He kind of organized this group called the Korean Grocery Association way back in the late 80s, early 90s. And so during that time, he would fly like all over the country to sort of mediate and like create dialogues between communities. And so he was very active. And I remember like reading a lot about that time because my parents were so into it. But I just remember like not being able to find any kind of, I guess, English, like accounts or history or news articles about like what exactly was happening, you know? So I got hearsay from my parents and then like my parents' friends. And so that's why I was like really curious to know like what, you know, what that was, what that struggle was. Yeah.
I was here when it happened. It was pretty horrifying to just see the community just rip itself apart. It was a bad time, that's for sure. I mean, there's a couple really good documentaries. John Ridley did one. I think it's just LA Riots 92 or it's 92. I mean, that was but what the documentary does is it gives all the backstory as to how we got to this place.
Right.
So,
I mean, it's interesting because like, you know, as a Korean American, like what my performance was to kind of like decolonize the story or the history that she was like brought up, you know, with, and kind of just see it from the very, very niche, like Korean American perspective and lens, you know, because that side had not been told before. And so, you know, the fact that we were sort of victims of this, the riots, and, you know, that K-Town was very much like targeted, or that Korean businesses were targeted, is something that is not very like talked about, you know, of the riots. And so I feel like sometimes, you know, with this like racial dialogues, it is very much a complex issue of like backstories of like socio-economic, political, you know, dialogue. And so it's something we need to talk about, you know, because it did happen and it continues to happen, you know, maybe not with this community, but with that community, you know, there's always like this sort of divide or finger pointing or blame or shame, you know, and I just feel like, yeah, as an artist, like, it's kind of our responsibility to raise these questions and to talk, you know, to ask like, what is that? You know, what happened? You know?
So Vivian, where can people find you not tweeting or not posting on social media?
I mean, I do have these accounts, but it's so sad. But if you want to follow me.
Well, you should be posting now. Hey,
okay,
my movie's coming out. It's so weird because I feel like this is the whole industry of publicists is built up from people being embarrassed about selling themselves, yet there is this tool, social media, to promote your work.
Yeah,
And
you know,
so-
my friend was like, if you're proud of this, you should be proud to promote it. You know, don't be like shy. You know,
I'll retweet you, and Film Threat will retweet you. Just, you know,
Okay.
I will too.
the podcast. Post the podcast.
Okay.
Mention us. We'll retweet you.
All
And
right.
we'll amplify, or I don't know. Maybe you'll amplify us. I don't know. We'll follow you too. Where can we find you?
Yeah, so on Twitter, it's just at Vivian Bang.
So
And
is that where people want to reach you if they want to make a movie with you too?
no, I guess the way to reach me is through Instagram.
Oh, right. That's how
Daryl got. Yeah,
That's
it's
how
through Insta.
your first feature worked out.
And my Insta handle is I am Bang.
I am Bang. Great. Well,
Private. I'm not. Yeah.
Vivian, thank you for joining us.
Oh my
on the
God,
podcast.
thanks for having me. This is
you.
so fun.
Hello?
Hi, I'm the TaskRabbit. You said you needed help with reorganizing.
Come in. There's this weird spot.
No problem.
They don't tell you in art school you have to like marry rich.
Can you hear me?
I come to America 9 years ago. Work hard and you can make it.
Can I ride on your back like a pony?
Ride on my back like a pony? Was that like a pony?
Over 2,000 Korean businesses were burnt down during the LA riots.
Why city punish the victim?
I saw your stuff on YouTube. Would it be more helpful for you if you said it in your native dialect?
You want me to put like an Asian character?
You don't want to try that?
No.
Hey, why are you talking about the riots? Are you anti-black?
No, of course not. Like my best friends are like, yeah. Tell me about you. What's your story?
I'm a photographer.
You seem so balanced. I don't have balance in my life.
Is it self-indulgent to be an artist when the world's going crazy?
I don't know. I have to make stuff. If I don't, I'll go insane.
I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just wasting my life.
Oh no. I just have to get to the TaskRabbit job that I had you come over to do.
Yes,
the
of
shed is like a
course.
mess, so
It's right back here. Let's go.
yeah.